Hey friends, today we are doing everyone's favourite mid-year book freakout tag. I'm pretty sure this is the most on time I've ever done it, which is fun. But as everyone knows, this tag was created by Ellie and Chami, and I also like to add some stats and stuff to turn it into a more general look at the last 6 months. I know the charts and everything aren't interesting to everyone though, so I'll put a timestamp for where you can skip to the rest of the tag questions if you want. So, in terms of total number of books read, I have read 58 books so far this year, which is less than in this time previous years, which, it doesn't matter how much you've read. I feel the need to repeat this every time I do one of these check-ins. The only reason I find it interesting to track is for reasons like this, so I can see, track how my reading patterns have changed, because I think that is interesting. So I have read fewer books this year than I had this time last year, and I think that's mostly a function of the fact that I'm listening to a lot fewer audiobooks these days. So far this year, I've only read 12% on audio, whereas this time last year, I was at close to 75%, and I can listen to an audiobook much quicker than it takes me to read a physical book. So I think that, that's definitely part of it, which is just, interesting pattern to notice. In other things, in terms of age range, I've read almost half adult books and the rest fairly evenly split between picture books, middle grade and YA, which is kind of a surprise actually. I feel like I've been reading a lot of middle grade and picture books. I would have expected those percentages to be higher, but still I'm pretty happy with this. Generally, I have been reading a lot more picture books this year than I have before, and I've been absolutely loving them, so that's great. What else is interesting? Star rating. As usual, large predominance of 4 stars, which is what I like to see. Also, author ethnicity is interesting. Ethnicity is the only metric I track for author identity, because it's the only one that's usually pretty easily available without getting too invasive into things the author might not want to share. And I usually don't actually talk about it on here because I don't want it to become performative or something I'm doing for someone else's sake, I guess. But usually it does tend to be around 50% white, 50% everything else. But this year, for the first time, not only is white a lot less than 50%, but another group is significantly more. Doesn't feel like I've been reading that much by South Asian authors, but apparently I have, which is great, and hopefully I can keep that up for the rest of the year. And publisher is also interesting. So I have, in previous years, I've kind of struggled about which publisher to put down, but this year I've standardised it to what goes into the spreadsheet is the UK publisher of the print edition, regardless of what edition I read or any other factors. That's what goes into the spreadsheet. And actually it turns out that only 31% of the books I've read so far have been from the big 5 publishers, which tells me that the UK publishing market is a lot healthier than the US market, which is something I wouldn't have noticed otherwise, given how much US discourse tends to dominate. So that's interesting, or I find it interesting. And if anyone watching this is from another country that's not the UK or the US, I'd be so interested to know what kind of pattern you're seeing. So I don't know, I like maths and statistics, so this is fun for me. I don't know if it was interesting for anyone else, but let's get into the actual tag questions. So question 1 is the best book you've read so far this year. And looking at my list, I feel like there haven't really been any major standouts. Even the books I felt strongly about when I read them, I feel like my feelings have already faded. But I'm going to go with Cut from the Same Cloth, which is a collection of essays written by 20 different Muslim women. And I just found this absolutely beautiful. Every single essay had something that I could relate to in some way, or that made me think, even when I didn't 100% agree with them all, which I think really shows the beauty of kind of the variety of opinions within Islam, but while still sticking to the principles of Islam, which I think is really important in a collection like this. So that was just great, and I was really so impressed by the breadth of topics that they cover. Some essays are explicitly religious, but some aren't, and they deal with all kinds of things. I have a much fuller review on Goodreads that lists my favourite essays and everything, so I'll link to that if you want more information. Question 2 is the best sequel you've read so far this year, and this is for sure Redemptor by Jordan Ifueko. I don't think I loved this quite as much as I loved Raybearer, but that is an extremely high bar, so I still thought this was amazing. I love Tarasai's whole arc so much. She's definitely one of my new favourite characters, and everything this book has to say about politics and justice and power is all just so emotional and so resonant and so succinct as well, and I just think yeah, the characters are great. Well, the main character is great, and the themes are great, and that's kind of all I need. Question 3 is a new release you haven't read yet but want to, and probably my most anticipated release of the entire year is A Bit of Earth by Cara, which has been pushed back several times, so I feel like I've been waiting for it for years. This is a modern Secret Garden retelling with a Pakistani main character. And I haven't read anything else by Cara, but that's basically all I need to know, and I'm sold. And I am going to be reading this in August with Cara at Wild Book Garden for her Not a Genre book club. She very kindly asked me to co-host a few rounds. This is one of our picks. I will link both of our announcements for that in case you missed them. And I haven't really seen too many early reviews for this one, so I hope I'm not raising my own expectations too high, but I am so excited. A couple of other things. Grounded, which is a middle grade that's co-written by S.K. Ali, Aisha Saeed, Jamila Tompkins-Bigelow and Huda Al-Marashi, which is about 4 Muslim kids who get stuck in an airport. I don't really know too much more than that, but all of these authors were also contributors to Once Upon an Eid, and I've seen them lately talking about like how important it was for them to write this book about Muslim joy, and it just sounds so great, and I'm so excited, and I can't wait until it's out in paperback so I can buy a copy that's not the hardback. Then finally we have also The Late Mrs. Willoughby by Claudia Gray, which is a sequel to The Murder of Mr. Wickham. They're kind of basically crossover Austen fanfiction murder mysteries, which obviously I'm completely on board with. And I really enjoyed the first book, and Cara recently reviewed the sequel and she said that was also really good, so I'm excited. Then question 4, most anticipated release for the second half of this year. I actually really don't have a good handle on what's coming out later this year. When I first sat down a week ago to write my answers for this tag, I didn't even have an answer for this. But the new Frances Harding book finally has a cover and a pre-order link, which means it's probably definitely coming out when it's meant to in September. I wasn't really letting myself be excited about it because her last one got pushed back a lot from its original release date, and this one didn't even have a cover until a week ago. But now I'm hyped because it seems like it's coming. It's called The Island of Whispers, and the synopsis called it a gothic coming-of-age thriller, which isn't a string of words that would usually excite me, but it's Frances Harding. Obviously I'm going to read it regardless. Also, the cover is very different to what I usually expect from her, so that's intriguing. We shall see what it turns out to be like. Question 5, biggest disappointment. I've definitely had a few. The Tea Trolley by Rahana Alam was one. The author of this one is a friend of my grandmother's, and so my grandmother's been trying to get me to read it for ages, and I had hopes, but I ended up hating it. It was just the bleakest picture of marriage that there could possibly ever be. Every single marriage they brought up was somewhere between unhappy to outright abusive. Also, the main character was just wildly self-centered and annoying, so it wasn't a fun reading experience. Thankfully, it was only, I think, less than 200 pages, so it didn't take too long. And then also Spice Road by Maya Ibrahim. This one wasn't so bad. I gave it 3 stars, but I just wanted to love it so much more, and I've seen so many other people loving it, so I was just sad that it didn't work for me. And it just turned out to have all the YA tropes I hate, and I found the reading experience really just boring and frustrating. And honestly, I think I probably would have DNF'd it if I hadn't been reading it for review. So yeah, just one I didn't have a good time with. Biggest surprise, I'm gonna go with Babel by R.F. Kuang. This is slightly sideways. Well, I'm both surprised and not surprised by how much it worked for me. Not surprised because going into it, I knew it had a lot of elements that were so deeply in my wheelhouse, so I was expecting to like it, but in hindsight, the execution is very far from perfect, as a lot of people have said. So I am a little surprised that all those elements that were so, for me, worked so well, enough to outweigh the imperfections in how it was executed. So I'm a little surprised about that. And also, again, this is approaching this question slightly sideways, but I'm quite surprised by the reception to Babel, because honestly, I'm just shocked that as many people have loved this as they have, because, again, it has a lot of flaws, and I can absolutely see many ways in which it could turn off a lot of readers, and also, it's just very esoteric and very nerdy about, very specific linguistic details and things, which I really would not expect to be interesting to most people. I don't know, I guess book people are more likely to be interested in that kind of thing than general public. I don't know, yeah. Just everything about this book is a surprise to me. And in hindsight, kind of the more I think about it, the more obvious the flaws are to me. But emotionally, it still really got me. So make of that what you will. I have a full discussion about this in which I come to no conclusions if you're interested in seeing me ramble some more about it. I don't know. Number 7 is a favourite new author, debut or new to you, and I always have trouble with this question, and this year I haven't got either a favourite new author or a new favourite author, i.e. an author whom I've read before but has now been cemented as a favourite. The only new to me author I've read more than one thing from so far this year is Catherine Valenti, thanks to the Fairyland series, which I did really love the Fairyland series, and I do want to read more from her, but I don't think she's quite at favourite status yet. She definitely could be. Based on the Fairyland series and what I've heard about her books, I definitely think she could get there, but she's not there yet, so I don't think this is a true answer for this question. Next question is underrated gems you've discovered, and in contrast, I have so many things I can mention here, just so many. First of all, any of the picture books I've read could definitely be considered underrated. Standouts have been Where Are You From by Shamile Syed Mendes, illustrated by Jamie Kim, Like the Moon Loves the Sky by Hina Khan, illustrated by Safa Khan, and Deep in the Sahara by Kelly Kunayi, illustrated by Huda Haddadi. Those were all fantastic. Also, The Kingdom Over the Sea by Zohra Nabi, which is a middle grade fantasy that I haven't seen a single person mention anywhere, but which I loved. And also Bye For Now by Maliha Siddiqui, which is a Muslim Parent Trap retelling. This one, it won the Muslim Bookstagram Awards for Best Middle Grade last year, so I think it's fairly well known among Muslim reviewing circles, but I haven't seen anyone mentioning it outside that. Oh, and also The Fairy Tellers by Nicholas Jubber. At the time of recording this, it only has, I think, less than 300 ratings on Goodreads, which is such a shame because it's fascinating. It's a collection of biographies of 7 people who told fairy tales, but it's also an exploration of why we tell and retell fairy tales and how stories spread across cultures and eras. It's just so well told. Really loved that one. And I feel like, people who love books would find a lot to love and be interested in a book like that. Highly recommend. Okay, number 9, rereads this year. I haven't really reread that much. As usual, I've been comfort rereading parts of False Colours and The Foundling by Georgette Heyer on a pretty frequent basis. Honestly, truly a ridiculous amount of rereads for bits of those. But I usually don't read the whole book from beginning to end, so I don't think that really counts. I think the only thing I've reread cover to cover is Love in a Headscarf by Shlina Jan Muhammad. This is Shlina's memoir about how she met her husband, but it's also just about being a 20-something Muslim woman in Britain. I first read this when I was 13, soon after I started wearing hijab myself, but this time around, as a 20-something, it just resonated with me so much more, and yeah, it just really, really hit me, and I really, really loved it. Question 10, newest fictional crush. I do not have an answer for this one. I feel like most of the adult books I've read so far this year have been non-fiction, and most of the fiction has been picture books in middle grade. That's what it feels like, and none of that really has much potential with fiction crushes. I guess the closest thing I have is Tristram Shield from Georgette Heyer's The Talisman Ring, but I don't know, I liked him a lot, but he doesn't come anywhere close to the standard of how much I love my favourite Heyer men, so I don't really feel like he counts. I don't know, no good answer for this one. And then same thing for newest favourite character. Again, I'm struggling to pick a real standout, but I think this has to go to Emily Wilde from Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. The whole book overall didn't quite live up to what I was hoping for, but I did really love Emily herself. She's just really introverted and awkward and struggles to form relationships with new people, and I related to her so hard. I'm very excited for the sequel because have you seen the UK cover? It is stunning. Okay, number 12, books that made you cry. I could use several for these. I could say cut from the same cloth again, but I think the standout has to be Ramadan Reflections by Alia Rayyan. This is a journal type book where every day in Ramadan has a value or a theme. There's about 5 pages of explanation and then question prompts for reflection. And I found the way it was presented really valuable and effective. Most days I didn't actually write down answers for the prompts, but it really made me think about my life. It was just really affecting. Question 13, book that made you happy. Again, a tough one. I think I have to go with She Wore Red Trainers by Naima B. Roberts. I have slightly mixed feelings about this one. You can go and read my full review for more thoughts, but I don't really think it's a very well written story overall, but the Muslim representation is everything. It's just so refreshingly unapologetic about how deeply practicing all the characters are, and I love that so much. Question 14, most beautiful book you've bought or received so far this year. You know, for all that I stress about my physical TBR, I don't actually acquire that many books, and this year I haven't bought anything particularly gorgeous or unusual. So I'm repurposing this question to book you've read with the prettiest cover. And the most honest answer to this would be Redemptor again, specifically the UK cover. The colours and the foiling is just so pretty. Also The Kingdom Over the Sea, the pastel and the waves, it's just great. And for one that isn't a repetition, I'm going to say Mary Keat and the Ocean of Stars by Cara Daniel Cruz. I don't know, I can't give a specific reason why I love this one, but I really do. So then final question is goals for the rest of the year. As usual, TBR is still the main one. I will be doing my Q2 TBR check-in hopefully soon. But basically, at this point in the year, I am just under halfway there with both my 10 books to read and my 5 series to finish lists for 2023. So slightly behind, but should be able to catch up, I hope. I've got a very busy summer coming up, but I am hoping to take part in Margaret from the Word Nerds mid-year reading scramble readathon in July, so hopefully that will get me back on track. That's really the main one. And then to figure out what I want to do with this channel, I haven't quite decided what I want to do in terms of this channel versus the blog versus Instagram, and where I want to put content and how online I want to be. I'm coming up on 6 years on Bookstagram in August, which feels wild, and I don't know, I'm just having a lot of thoughts about it. I mean, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I've been having these sorts of thoughts for years, as I think quite a few of us have. But yeah, just trying to figure myself out, I guess. I don't really have any more specific goals than that. I have a couple of hopefully interesting projects that I've been planning that I want to finally get to, but yeah, so that is the end. Let me know if you have a new favourite author for this year, because I very much don't, and also let me know who your newest fictional crush is, and if you've read any of these books, come and chat. I hope this was vaguely interesting, and thank you for watching to the end.